Hello and welcome to Regiments of Renown. What do they do and when should you take them? Dwarf Edition. If this is your first time in this series, what we're going to be doing is looking at the Regiments of Renown and what advantages and disadvantages they have compared to the regular unit and when you should take them. Most of this information is going to be targeted at domination mode, but it can apply to land battle too if that's your thing. Anyway, let's get right into it. So first off, we've got the Akron Miners blasting charges. The main advantage of these guys over the basic ones is they get Frenzy and they get 3 volleys instead of 1. Minus Blasting Charge are one of the best units for dwarves in domination mode in general, because they're Blasting Charge. The Blasting Charge do so much damage with the buffs to Explosion damage and Armor 3. They can clear infantry very, very quickly. Having more ammo is just a straight plus. It's a massive power boost for you, so these guys are pretty much an auto-include in most of my dwarf builds these days. Like, they're just so good at killing out infantry, and then, you know, whatever tattered remains to survive the initial volley can actually be cleared out by their melee stats, which are quite a bit by Frenzy. And Frenzy is really good on dwarf units because they have such high leadership anyway, so it takes a long time for it actually to wear off. So, Akron Miners are definitely a very, very strong choice. If you're bringing Miners Blasting Charges, you usually want the Akron Miners. They're just a better version of that unit, so they're very, very strong. Next up, we got the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, Dwarf Warriors. So, the main bonus they have with the regular ones is fire attacks and a bonus versus infantry, as well as rank 9 stats. Everything here has rank 9 stats. That's just how our Regiments of Renown work, so keep that in mind going forward. So, like I said, the main thing they have is bonus infantry and flaming attacks. And the bonus infantry is kind of underwhelming. It's only 6 bonus infantry, which is pretty low. And the flaming attacks are alright against healing factions, but for the price, they cost the same as a Longbeard. If I was just going for... Unless I really need the flaming attacks to kill, you know, healing units, you know, like if you're playing against Nurgle, if you're playing against Counts, sure, the flaming attacks are nice. But the bonus for the infantry is really underwhelming, so I don't think I'd ever actually pay for these guys just for that bonus for infantry when you could get a Longbeard instead. So, again, if you're playing against a healing faction, if you really want the fire damage to reduce healing, then sure. But I think most of the time, you just pass on these guys. I know some people really like them, some dwarf players always take them. I'm just not a fan of them myself. Next, the Grappling Guard, Longbeard with great weapons. So their main perk is this ability right here. The Old Grumblers. It gives vigor per second refresh in an aura around them. This isn't super relevant in domination mode. Vigor is much less of an issue when there's constantly being fresh units summoned on the battlefield, as well as the radius isn't huge. It's 35 meters, which is fine. But when you're only your entire roster is infantry units, you're not going to be hitting a whole lot. And if you are, it's because you're bunched up and are just going to get targeted by magic. You usually want to be spread out, both to avoid magic and missiles, and also just to spread out to control the map space. So I don't think this ability is really going to be hitting more than one other unit at a time. So I think you're paying quite a bit for just a mediocre ability. I think you're much better off with just the basic Longbeard great weapons if you want, you know, a more elite armor-piercing infantry unit. Next up, we got Ulthuar's Raiders. These are great open rangers. They have the throwing axes, so they're very, very good at killing armored infantry. And this is the ability they have that the regulars don't. It's just this active ability marked by Ulthuar. Lowers missile resistance, lowers missile block chance, and armor. This is really, really good for firing down any of those silver shielded infantry units you see a lot of. Chaos Warriors, Tomb King Skeletons, Bleak Swords, anything like that. Because missile block chance actually reduces the effectiveness of shields. So if you hit an opponent with this ability, you focus fire them with your anti-infantry missiles, whether they be Quarrelers, more Rangers, whatever. They can kill them very, very quickly, and this is probably your best bet against those Chaos Warriors you'll be seeing. These guys have indirect fires, so they're good at shooting over your front line. With high AP values, if you just use this, reduce the silver shields, focus fire those Chaos Warriors, it's a very, very effective tool to get rid of those armored infantry, just, you know, being so tanky on points and hard to get rid of. On top of that, they also have Vanguard deploy, so they're really good at getting to where they need to be very quickly, although that's not unique to them amongst other Rangers. Next, we have the Dragonback Slayers. Dragonback Slayers are a little bit of an interesting one. They have a couple of extra abilities. They have some Fizz Resist. They have charge defense. But the big thing they have is this, the power of the Dragonback. So it imbues Flammable, which is a 30% slow, as well as 20% weakness to fire damage. Then they also get 20% flame resistance. All of these are while they're in melee. This is a little weird. Most things that imbue Flammable also deal fire damage. These guys don't deal fire damage. They don't actually benefit from imbuing weakness to fire damage, unless they have something else granting fire damage. But you don't have a lot of fire damage in your roster. You have the Dwarves, Dragonfire Pass, you have some Iron Drakes, and I think Thorak has some abilities as well. But for the most part, you're really just going for the slow, which is very, very strong. Dwarves love slows, because obviously they're slow, and if you can bring somebody down to your level, you can really beat the shit out of them with your better stats. So for a Slayer unit that wants to be fighting large units anyway, these are a great tool to have on top of your artillery or your missile pieces. So when a dragon or a cav unit charges in, you can hit them with a slow, pin them down, and just tear them apart with these Slayers. So very, very strong unit for protecting your backline. Great to apply that slow and make sure any, like I said, any chariots, any mass can't get out of your backline, and you can just pin them down and beat the shit out of them. Very, very strong unit when you're trying to protect a gun line, and you usually want Slayers anyway, so just having a better Slayer with more sticking power is very, very strong. Next up, we got the Peak Guard Hammerers. Their main draw is Armor Sundering and ITP. I think ITP on Dwarves is a little redundant. Their leadership is insanely high anyway. They usually fight to the last man regardless, or just about. They usually fight till they have like 5 to 10 models left. So ITP is kind of irrelevant, I feel like. You're not going to break anyways, so terror routing is not really a big threat. And then Armor Sundering. Armor Sundering is usually best paired with units that don't have AP. The Hammers are a very elite, heavy-hitting AP infantry unit. So unless you're using them to help focus fire your Quarrelers or any lightly armored or non-AP missile units, it's not that useful. And the thing is, even if you are doing that, like if you are focus firing with your Quarrelers, like the Hammers usually don't need help to win those melee fights. They tend to beat most other infantry units with their hefty melee stats. So again, it's just kind of a wasted stat, I feel like. So if you want Hammers, which you rarely do, Hammers aren't that effective and they don't really play towards what the Dwarves want to be doing anyway. They're just kind of a waste. Most of their stat abilities just don't come into play that often. So I wouldn't really consider taking them very often, unless you are expecting a lot of armor, I guess. I don't know. I don't know when I would take these guys. Norgromling's Iron Breakers. Okay, this one might be a hot take. I don't like this unit. So their main draw is, again, they have ITP, which, as I explained, I don't think is very useful. They have they have Vanguard deploy, which is really nice in domination. And then they have 20 extra models, as well as, again, insane stats. People bring these to just have them tank on a point a lot. Just, one unit that can hold a point on their own. But I feel like you don't need to have a specialized tanky unit as the Dwarves. Your Dwarves, everything you have is already tanky. Now, their blasting charges deal a lot of damage, even more than I believe the Miners' blasting charges. Yeah, quite considerably more. And they have more models, so they will hit really hard their blasting charges. But you're paying so much for them, they need to do a lot more than just their blasting charges, so I personally really don't like this unit. Or Iron Breakers in general, I'm not really a fan of. This one in particular, it's just very, very expensive. Yeah, the Vanguard deployment is nice, the ammunition is fine, but then they're just going to grind in melee, which you could have like 3 Dwarf Warriors for the same price that would grind in melee probably more efficiently because they're fighting more units at once. Whereas these guys, because they're so tanky, they're going to fight one unit, they're going to fight it for several minutes, and they're just never going to pay for themselves. So I think I'd almost always rather have 3 or 4 Miners with blasting charges or 3 Dwarf Warriors instead of these guys, personally. Again, that might be a hot take. Some people probably disagree with me there. Next we have the Skoulder Guard, Iron Drakes. So the neat thing about these guys is they actually lose the burnt contact effect, they lose the leadership debuff, and the fire damage from their Iron Drakes attack, but they gain AP. They gain AP. So this is another weird unit. They also get a bit of Fizz Resist, but that's not super relevant on missile unit. Usually if something gets on them, they're going to die anyway. So this is a bit of a weird one. On paper, they look like a good missile unit. The thing is, with their low range and low speed, they're almost never going to get to pick their targets. They're just going to have to shoot whatever's in front of them, which is usually going to end up being lightly armored chaff. Your opponent would have to mess up pretty heavily to let you shoot something high value with this unit. So you'd almost rather have the basic one that's better at clearing chaff. They have flaming attacks. They have the burnt effect to route them faster. They have higher missile strength. They also have more ammo, but I'm not sure how their ammo is deployed because I think it's a little buggy. So I think this unit is actively a downgrade over the regular one most of the time. I think you'd almost always rather have the basic Iron Drake over this Skoulder Guard. Next we got the Goblobbers. Goblobbers are an excellent catapult unit. Their whole thing is they have this Discouraged effect, which is minus 16 leadership, which when stacked with the attack by artillery leadership debuff, which any unit that's attacked by artillery takes minus 10 to leadership. So you're nuking leadership by 26. Very, very effective against low leadership factions, Skaven, Greenskins, anything like that. If I'm taking a Goblobber, if I'm taking a Grudge Thrower, I'm probably taking the Goblobbers. The only time I would consider bringing a basic one over these ones is against undead factions, where the leadership isn't as impactful. You might cause them to crumble a little bit sooner, but you're not Crumbling doesn't really matter at the moment. It needs to be... It just does do enough damage currently. Maybe that'll change in the future, but for the moment, crumbling isn't a big factor, so you'd almost always rather just have the basic one against... Say for them thinking like Coast, if you're trying to duel with artillery. But for the most part, if I'm bringing a Grudge Thrower, I'm bringing the Goblobbers. And last but certainly not least, we have the Skyhammer, the ROR Gyro Bomber. So this bad boy is pretty much a unanimous pick in Domination for Dwarves. It does so much damage so fast with these Skyhammer bombs, which does... So the basic one does 100 damage, 70% AP. And this one does 140 with 50% AP, and then 100 explosive damage on top of that, with 4 projectiles. So it does a ton more damage. And it can easily half-health most infantries with a single bomb drop. On top of that, just being able to yeet your bombs so much faster, because you only have 5 as opposed to the 11 of the basic ones, means it doesn't take as much micro. You can just get out there, throw the bombs, and then if it's in danger, you can desummon it, or you can just sit it on a target and shoot. So let it shoot a single entity, let it shoot a chariot, whatever. And it really helps you deal with that. Whereas the basic one, you have to put a lot more work in to actually get any value out of the bombs. The basic one might get the same damage if you actually micro perfectly, but the Skyhammer gets you that damage much, much faster. It's just a much higher impact unit in Domination, I think. So this guy you will see a lot of if you play as or against Dwarves in Domination. It's very, very strong. It's one of the few units on the Dwarf roster that can actually get out on the map and get impact quickly. Dwarves tend to be a very slow, grindy faction. This is the exception to that, and that's why you see it so much in Domination. That is all the RORs we have for Dwarves. Thank you for watching. If you have a request about what faction you'd like to see next, please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed, you found it helpful, please leave a comment. We'll be having more of these. I intend to do this for every faction, so please subscribe if you want to see the rest. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.